My name is Ava. I've spent my entire adult life with my husband, from young friends to life partners, raising 2 kids together. Our life used to feel warm and steady until a game between 2 consenting adults turned into something that left me hurt and confused. What once felt safe now feels unsettling, and I don't know if love alone is enough to save our marriage anymore. I used to believe that a peaceful family life was a given as long as 2 people loved each other and worked through things together. Over more than a decade, my husband and I had weathered many storms, financial struggles, parenting challenges, differences in life goals. But through it all, we held hands and walked forward. We shared chores, laughed together, played with our kids, and stayed emotionally connected in quiet ways through small touches, shared hobbies, and weekend movie nights. It wasn't a passionate marriage, but it was warm, it was familiar, and it felt safe. But I've learned that even small cracks can shake the very foundation you thought was solid. Physical intimacy was never our strong suit. I'm not someone who initiates often, and he had his own periods of distance or disinterest. There were dry spells, but we always found our way back through hugs, casual closeness, or those soft, unspoken moments that make you feel like you're still in this together. Then came the kink, something new we decided to try. It seemed harmless at first as long as there was consent. I trusted him, and I thought maybe this would help reignite something between us. At the beginning, it felt thrilling, but safe, something private that brought us closer. But I never expected how fast that line between fantasy and reality would blur. Soon it became the only form of intimacy. He showed interest in me asleep, sometimes unaware it had even happened. It started to feel less like connection and more like I was disappearing from the equation entirely. I told him clearly that I didn't want to do it anymore. There was no anger or blame, just honesty. I explained that it made me feel detached, disrespected, and alone. He agreed to stop. I believed him, and then it happened again. Not once, but twice. After I had said no, betrayal doesn't always come in shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it comes quietly through actions that erode your sense of safety and dignity. I felt violated not just physically, but emotionally. Like my words hadn't mattered. Like I wasn't even being seen anymore. How could the same man who held me through panic attacks be the one I now fear sleeping beside? The cruel irony is, I still love him. That's what makes this so painful. I love the way he tucks our kids in at night, the way he jokes when cooking dinner, the small things that built this life. But I also can't go back to pretending this didn't happen. I need to ask myself the hard question, can I still trust this person to share my life, my body, my safety? I don't know the answer yet, but I do know I have to start listening to myself. Because even if love still lives here, I deserve to feel safe in my own bed, in my own marriage, and that's where healing has to begin. Throughout the years we've been together, even when our marriage hit rough patches, I always believed we had a deep sense of trust. We had our share of disagreements, periods of distance, and misaligned goals. But through it all, I held on to the one thing I cherished most, feeling safe with my husband. He was the person I could lean on, the one who had seen me at my most vulnerable, who held me through panic attacks rooted in childhood trauma. That's why when we started experimenting with a private kink, I trusted him completely. At first, the idea of intimacy while I was asleep felt like a harmless exploration as long as it was built on clear consent. In the beginning, it felt new, exciting, and safe. Sometimes I would pretend to be asleep and we'd both laugh afterward. I believed it was a way to refresh our connection, especially since our sex life had become dull and distant. But gradually things started to shift. That kink became the only way he wanted to be intimate. Every time we had sex, it was while I was asleep, often after nights I'd had a few drinks with friends. Slowly, I started feeling disconnected. Not remembering the act the next morning made me feel like a ghost in my own body. Even though I had consented at first, that haze, that lack of awareness left me feeling unsettled and uncomfortable. It no longer felt like a shared moment. It felt like something was being taken from me without my full presence. So I spoke up. Calmly, clearly, without anger, I told him I no longer wanted to continue. I said I didn't feel right about it anymore, that it left me feeling confused and not respected. He didn't argue. He agreed. I believed him, but a few days later I woke up and knew. The soreness, the scent, the signs it had happened again. And this time after I had said no. His reaction broke something in me. He laughed at first, brushing it off. Said we'd done it so many times before, said I used to enjoy it. Said I was his wife. Said maybe my refusal was part of the fantasy, a role play I hadn't clearly stepped out of. He blurred the line between what was real and what was pretend, between consent and its absence. But I knew I had said no. Unequivocally. Sober. Serious. I wasn't just betrayed, I felt erased. From someone who once felt in control of her own body and boundaries, I now felt powerless. Being touched without knowing, without remembering, after withdrawing my consent, pulled old wounds to the surface. Pain I thought I had buried long ago, the trauma of being violated as a child, returned in a way I never expected. I'm not someone who gives up easily. This man has been my partner through most of my adult life. But now I'm faced with the hardest question of all. Can I continue to live beside someone who knowingly crossed a line I had clearly drawn? Love still exists, but I have to love myself enough not to ignore what happened. I don't know what comes next, but I know the first step is reclaiming my sense of safety and my voice. That's where healing begins. In every relationship, the bare minimum anyone hopes for isn't grand gestures or fancy words. It's the feeling of being heard and respected. Ava used to believe I had that in my marriage. I've never been the best at expressing my emotions, especially when it comes to intimacy. But I've always tried, and I believed that honesty between spouses would be enough to help us find balance. When I said no clearly, directly, without ambiguity, I thought I had done what was necessary to set a boundary. I wasn't angry, I didn't accuse him. I simply shared how I felt, that I no longer felt comfortable with the kink we had once explored together. I believed that kind of openness would be received with care, the way a loving partner should respond. I was wrong. 3 days later, I woke up groggy after a night out with friends and a few drinks, and I knew something had happened. I didn't need to see anything or hear it confirmed. My body told me. That slight soreness, the shift in scent, the feeling of being off. Women know these signs all too well, and the realization hit me like a punch to the chest. I doubted myself. Am I imagining this? Maybe I'm overreacting, but deep down I knew. I confronted him point blank. When he finally stopped dodging and admitted it, my world cracked. It wasn't just what he did, it was how he reacted. The way he laughed it off like I was being dramatic. Like my clear no didn't count because I had once said yes. That's what hurt the most, not just the act itself, but the way he disregarded my voice, my boundary, my autonomy. I wasn't speaking to the man I thought I knew. I was facing someone who no longer recognized what a boundary even meant. He said I'm hard to approach when I'm awake, that maybe he thought I was playing out a fantasy. But I had made it undeniably clear that I didn't want to continue. Consent isn't permanent. Once withdrawn, anything that follows without it is a violation. Trying to justify it by saying you used to like it is to deny me the right to change my mind, something every person has the right to do. What tore me up even more was that I had trusted our communication to be enough. I thought we understood each other. But apparently no doesn't always mean no, even to someone who once claimed to love you the most. Afterward, I was a mess of emotions, anger, guilt, shame. Guilt because I once allowed it. Shame because I wondered if I hadn't been clear enough. But deep down, I knew I was clear. And in a healthy relationship, no one should have to re-explain their boundaries over and over just to be heard. I started questioning everything. Was his love for me ever what I thought it was? Do the sweet things he's done still matter if he's capable of crossing a line I drew to protect myself? Maybe the worst part isn't even what happened, but losing the belief that he would never hurt me. When someone you trust so deeply does just that, your whole world shifts. Now I'm trying to reclaim my voice, my autonomy, and my self-trust. And that starts with acknowledging one hard truth. I am not overreacting. I am not wrong. I'm simply standing up for myself exactly as I should. Some betrayals don't come with slammed doors, screaming matches, or shattered plates. Sometimes all it takes is one moment, one violation in the very room where I should have felt safest to realize that something in your marriage has broken. When I said no, I believed it was over. I believed my words held weight. I believed the man who had once held me through nightmares, who had wiped away my tears from old traumas, would never become the reason I no longer felt safe. But it happened again, not once, but twice. And the second time, I wasn't even sure if I'd been awake. I remembered nothing except a strange emptiness and a vague sense of discomfort the next morning. When I confronted him, I expected something: remorse, an apology, a sign of regret. But instead, I got confusion, a half smile, and excuses. He said, "We've done that so many times before, you're still my wife." He said, "You're hard to approach when you're awake," and I thought maybe this was part of the game. What startled me most was how calm he was, how casual his tone was, like he truly didn't see what was wrong. That's when I realized maybe he never fully understood that consent once given can always be taken back. That sex in marriage is not a given, not a debt, not a right granted by a marriage certificate. And it certainly isn't something that should continue once one person has clearly said no. Something deep inside me felt stolen. Not just my bodily autonomy, but my sense of trust, safety, and emotional connection. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was he still the man who held me through panic attacks? Was he still the one who patiently accepted my scars and helped me heal? Or was he someone who had drifted so far away that I hadn't seen it until the damage was done? I feel torn between two versions of my life, one with the man I once loved and the family we've built together, and the other, a cold reality full of pain and doubt. There are moments when I want to pack up everything, take the kids and leave. But then I see him laughing with the children, or he brings me my morning coffee like he always does, and my heart cracks all over again. Because I don't know who he truly is anymore, or rather which version of him I can live with. I know I can't fix this by pretending nothing happened. I need time, space, and an apology that doesn't come with disclaimers. More than anything, I need him to understand this: being his wife doesn't mean I belong to him at all hours in all states of consciousness. I am not a dream for him to touch while I sleep. I am a human being with thoughts, feelings, and the right to say no even if I once said yes. There's something Ava never thought I'd have to face in what once felt like a safe and steady marriage: the betrayal of the very person who once made me feel most protected. My husband had always been the one I leaned on, the man I believed would prioritize my safety and emotions above all else. We've been together for more than a decade, since our early 20s, raising 2 children, building a stable life. It hasn't always been perfect, but I never questioned the respect I thought he had for me until now. When I realized he had continued doing something I had explicitly told him to stop, I wasn't just shocked, I felt like I was trapped in some kind of nightmare. Everything inside me froze. Logically, I knew this was a serious violation, but my heart couldn't accept that this man, my partner, the father of my children, was capable of crossing that line. I started second-guessing myself. Did I make myself clear? Did I somehow give mixed signals? And then another voice inside me screamed, "No, you said no. You were direct. You did everything right. No one has the right to do this after you withdrew consent." The deeper I thought, the more painful the realization became. What I was feeling wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. Erasure of my boundaries, my emotions, my personhood. I wasn't a wife being cherished anymore. I had become someone passive, disconnected from the most basic right to control my own body. The pain didn't just come from the act itself, it came from how it was minimized, from the justifications, from the lack of sincere remorse. What terrified me most was that I didn't feel true regret in his voice. There was only surprised defensiveness and the same tired lines, "You used to be okay with it. I thought you still liked it. You're my wife." I started to feel torn in half. Part of me wanted to hold on to this family for the love we shared for our children, for all the good memories we had created together. But another part of me, the part that had stayed quiet as a child when I was hurt and no one believed me, is now screaming. That part is louder than it's ever been. It tells me that I cannot stay if I don't feel safe. It reminds me that love is never an excuse to blur personal boundaries. And no one, not even a husband, has the right to touch me after I've said no. I know leaving a marriage after 10 years isn't simple. I know he'll be blindsided if I walk away. I know people around me might say every marriage has its ups and downs, or it's just a misunderstanding or worse. It's not a big deal. He's your husband, not a stranger. But I also know this: if I dismiss my own feelings this time, I will lose myself forever. And I owe it to myself and to my children to be a mother who is strong, who is clear, and who stands up for truth. Yes, I still love him, but now I understand love has limits, and that limit is respect. Without it, everything else is just decoration.